Hello everyone! Life is filled with repetitive events. These recurring situations often arise from intense past experiences that continue to disturb and unsettle us internally. In this story, several characters find themselves connected through traumatic experiences. The death of one person forever binds two people, with both of them holding themselves responsible for what happened.
¿Cómo se ve?
Como un ángel que nunca vamos a conocer.
The escalator is moving downward as an elderly woman in a wedding dress with a red notebook in her hand rests on its steps. Her soul is preparing to leave her body, and memories of her happiest day, her wedding, flash through her mind. It was a perfect day with a charming groom, a luxurious limousine, and a grand hotel. Her lover carried her in his arms to the elevator, where they shared a passionate kiss. The doors of a different elevator open, and a guy in headphones comes out. Carlos enters the apartment, where he meets his younger brother, Oliver, who's pacing restlessly around the room. He looks scared and tries to warn Carlos about something. Carlos dismisses his worries and says he was able to get money and they can finally put their criminal past behind them. Their problems with addiction and the law are definitely not going to do them any good. The older brother was able to borrow money from their mother so they can start a new life. Suddenly, a detective, Marco Molina, shows up. He had already questioned Oliver, and the latter told him everything. That's why Oliver was worried. He was forced to lure his brother into the trap. The cop blackmailed and threatened him, and demands that both of them surrender. Carlos is filled with indignation, as there is no search warrant, and fights back against the detective, knocking the gun from his hands. The brothers quickly flee the apartment and run down the stairs. They ignore Marco's orders to stop, so he fires a single bullet at them. Against all odds and despite multiple flights of stairs, the bullet successfully hits its target. Carlos holds onto his leg and screams in pain. The detective pulls away in shock, and suddenly, all three of them hear the deafening sound of an explosion that shakes the building. Oliver screams in panic, trying to call for help for his injured brother. He swiftly wraps a tourniquet around Carlos's leg to stop the bleeding and lunges at Marco. The detective, holding a gun, threatens him and demands that they all go downstairs to be taken to the police station. They find the door to the first floor locked, and to their surprise, the stairs don't end.
¿Por qué si estamos en el piso 1 faltan tantos pisos por bajar? Pinche edificio raro.
The floor numbers on the wall start repeating too, and Marco continues going down alone. In shock, he meets the brothers he left 9 floors above. All the exits are locked, and the detective accuses the criminals of altering his mind with some kind of substances. Carlos thinks there's a connection between the strange loop and the explosion they heard earlier. His wound is still bleeding, and then he remembers how his mother once thought she lost him and Oliver in a kid's maze, while they were just chatting near the entrance. They attempt to clean the wound using a water bottle from a vending machine, and try to extract the bullet, but their efforts are unsuccessful. After 4 hours of trying to escape and calling out for help, Carlos starts feeling sick. He blames the detective for everything, but Marco tries to justify himself for pulling the trigger. It's like he was out of his mind.
Pensar en otras cosas, tu mente se va a otro lado y una energía o como una fuerza que me agarró.
Deja de mamar, le disparaste, cabrón.
Oliver doesn't accept his bizarre explanation, so the policeman leaves. As he gets up the stairs, a miniature King of Hearts falls out of his pocket. He tears it into several pieces and throws it away, and afterward, he gives Carlos a pill that will make him feel better. The wounded man slips into slumber, and Marco shares with his younger brother that it's his 15th wedding anniversary today. He adds that his wife and 3 daughters are eagerly waiting for him to join them for a celebratory dinner. Oliver doesn't care about that and promises to get revenge on Marco if his brother dies. They continue eating snacks from the vending machine and simply wait, struggling to come to terms with the weird situation they ended up in. Carlos wakes up and feels that he won't make it. In the embrace of his brother, he confesses that he never truly enjoyed a single day of his previous life. He was simply waiting for something to happen and change his fate. However, whenever things did change, he would always realize that he was actually better off before. His only wish is for his brother to avoid repeating the same mistakes and to cherish what he has now. Carlos dies, believing the endless staircase is just a figment of his imagination. But Marco and Oliver are still trapped. The detective suddenly realizes that 24 hours have passed, and the snacks in the vending machine have magically replenished. This makes him feel desperate again, and Oliver takes advantage of the chaos to grab the gun. He points it at his brother's killer and threatens to kill him.
Si estamos soñando, no te va a pasar nada si te disparo, ¿verdad, güey?
Lo estás pensando claro,
They are left standing opposite each other with no idea how to get out. Elsewhere, a girl named Camilla is being taught card tricks by her stepfather Roberto. Camilla's older brother, Danielle, becomes irritated by the loud reciting of magical spells and says that his sister is too young to understand the complex trick. Roberto reminds him of the upcoming trip to the sea, and the boy starts packing. He pulls out a deck of miniature cards he inherited from his grandmother and plans to take his hamster with him. Roberto tries in vain to talk him out of it. The stepfather has a good relationship with the girl, but the boy is still unwilling to accept him. Their mother, Sandra, comes home and reminds the kids that each of them need to take an inhaler for Camilla since she has asthma. Sandra calls her ex-husband, who will be accommodating the family at his seaside hotel.
Roberto, llevas 5 años sobrio. Me vuelves a sacar eso y te juro que te mato, ¿sí?
Roberto gets behind the wheel, and they drive out to the highway where they will spend the next several hours. On the way, the man smells something weird and pulls a piece of bamboo out of his back pocket. He doesn't understand where it came from and throws it out onto the road. The children complain that the road seems endless, even though there are still 4 hours to go. Soon, they make a stop so that the kids can use the bathroom. The stepfather buys juice from the gas station convenience store and offers Camilla a sip. Although the girl is allergic to some fruits, she tries the drink. She then gives Roberto her inhaler for safekeeping and runs off to the restroom. She trusts Roberto, though her brother insists he's not their dad. Sandra quickly takes the drink away from Camilla when she realizes it contains lemon juice. She scolds Roberto for his carelessness, fearing that the drink might trigger an asthma attack in the girl. After a while, Camilla starts choking in the car. Sandra asks to stop the vehicle, and everyone frantically searches for an inhaler. Roberto suddenly recalls that it's in his pocket, but clumsily drops it on the ground and accidentally steps on it, breaking the device. Danielle also forgot to bring his spare inhaler because he was distracted by his father's call. Sandra demands that they turn around and head back home to get the inhaler. They start driving back, but get startled by the sound of an explosion in the distance. 30 minutes later, they arrive at an abandoned gas station, where Sandra takes the pills for her daughter from the counter without any staff present. Unfortunately, Camilla's condition worsens, fueling Sandra's anger as she directs her fury at Roberto for his carelessness. The man justifies himself by saying that he didn't realize what he was doing. When he stepped on the inhaler, it was as if he lost control of his body. The woman doesn't want to listen to his excuses and just lashes out at him.
Tomás tenía razón, eres un pinche borracho de mierda, no sabes ni manejar.
No hemos pasado por ninguna salida, Sandra.
Roberto is the first to notice that the road leads them to the same gas station over and over again. He pulls out an outdated map from 1980, and Danielle notes that it's useless because it's 3 years old. Danielle and his mother are skeptical of Roberto's theory, and the boy attempts to venture out alone in search of help. However, Roberto manages to bring back resisting Danielle on his shoulders, and the family convinces the driver to turn around and head back. They drive for a while, but find no exit. Despite the nearing sunset, the sun doesn't appear to be setting. When they pass the same sign once more, Sandra becomes hysterical and takes her daughter outside to get some fresh air.
Ya casi llegamos, ya falta poquito.
Nos perdió. Yo confié en él.
Camilla turns pale and passes out, and Roberto tries to find where the explosion happened. They pass the same sign again, and Roberto realizes that the only option they haven't tried yet is to get off the road on foot. He tells Sandra and Danielle to wait for him and heads out into the field. But the woman can't just sit by while her daughter is dying. She starts the engine, despite Danielle's protests. Desperate, she hits the gas and slaps her cheeks as hard as she can to wake up from this nightmare. Her son asks her to stop when he can't feel his sister's pulse. He carries Camilla out of the car in his arms as Sandra loses the remnants of her sanity and drives off without her children. She loops back to where she started and nearly runs them over. Danielle waits for Roberto at the sign and soon sees the exhausted man begging for water. He drops to his knees saying that they have fallen into a trap and he too has been walking in circles. Back to the first loop on the stairs. Thousands of snacks and empty packages from a vending machine are sorted into piles. The walls are covered with formulas, words, and drawings. It's been 35 years since the incident started. An elderly Marco with gray hair is eating instant noodles with his hands. He is no longer able to walk and must crawl up the stairs to reach the vending machine. Everything on his floor is in total disrepair, and he lives among trash. Oliver runs past the detective, also visibly older. Oliver is doing much better. He works out every day, has made himself a shower from water bottles and a mirror from nail clippers. He has a strict routine that keeps him from going crazy. Every day, not only the vending machine is replenished, but also Carlos's backpack. His younger brother reverently prays at the altar where Carlos's belongings are placed. then meticulously organizes the backpack's contents into separate piles. While the money holds no value, the apples, book, and MP3 player serve as his sources of entertainment, keeping him occupied. Afterward, he helps Marco to relieve himself. The prisoners of the stairs use empty bottles for this purpose. They then put paper bags over their heads and pray to the skeleton of Carlos, which is hung on the wall. A gun is also placed above the head of the murdered Carlos. As they endure their shared misfortune, they remind each other of their past lives, counting how much their loved ones have aged outside the time loop. It is now the year 2052, and Marco's youngest daughter is on the verge of turning 40. A whole life he has missed entirely. The elderly man is also desperately attempting to convey something of great importance to Oliver.
Todavía no me acuerdo lo que te quiero decir. Nunca me acuerdo.
Oliver doesn't take his words seriously and goes to bed. Before dozing off, Marco repeats his name endlessly, trying not to forget it. Oliver falls asleep to the repetitive chant. The escalator takes the old woman in the white dress down again. The boy passes her, and the woman gives him the hamster she was holding in her hand. In the other loop that began in the 80s, Roberto's car is full of garbage and food from the gas station. Chalk writing on the pavement marks 35 years since the incident. Roberto, fueled by alcohol, speeds down the highway, colliding with the debris along the way. Sandra is in the passenger seat, and Roberto uses her to satisfy his desires. Even though she's alive, her gaze seems distant, as if lost in thought, and she doesn't say a word. Danielle lives in a tent off the road and makes soup from cactus. He made his dwelling out of a pile of gas station workers' overalls, one of which he wears himself. He still takes care of his hamster and goes for walks in the mountains. With music playing on his portable audio player, Danielle climbs to the top, where he throws away Camilla's inhaler that appears in his bag every day. Danielle lays out miniature cards, doing the magic trick his sister never managed to learn. On the wall of his tent, there are numerous drawings that look like they were made by a child. Roberto gets his supplies at the gas station and carries his wife to the bathroom. They continue driving along the endless highway, and suddenly, the man finds Camilla's stuffed bunny on the road. It was her favorite toy that the girl always took with her. Roberto picks up the bunny and carries it over to Danielle's tent. He spots the bunny and goes to confront his stepfather on the road. Up until now, the guy's long hair has covered his face, but it is revealed that he is actually the young detective Marco, the one who tried to apprehend Oliver and Carlos. Roberto has something important to tell him.
Pero no me acuerdo que... Así somos los viejos, Daniel.
Así somos los viejos, Daniel.
We're back in the endless staircase again, where the old man remembers his name, Daniel, and with it, his whole past life. He calls Oliver and wakes him up at 3 in the morning. The old man claims that if he tells Oliver the truth, he will die immediately. He asks Oliver to carry him to the wall, on which his family and 3 daughters are drawn. Marco, or rather Danielle, begins to cross out the drawings and screams that these people don't exist. For 35 years, he yearned for a life that was a lie. He killed Carlos because he was living a life that wasn't his, having lost himself in the guise of Detective Molina. Meanwhile, on the endless highway, Roberto discovers that Sandra has taken her last breath. Together with Danielle, they bury the woman next to her daughter's body. The stepfather speaks to Danielle, revealing that the last time his mom spoke was more than 20 years ago, when her son went to live by himself. She had completely lost interest in life and finally left the world that had been hell for her. Suddenly, Roberto grabs his head and starts screaming in pain. As they die, Roberto and Marco begin to explain to Danielle and Oliver how the incident works. It always starts with the death of a loved one, and Camilla's death is not the fault of Danielle, who forgot her inhaler.
Fue mi culpa.
Eso yo siempre lo supe.
No sabes.
In order not to cause the next incident, one must write down one's name, because upon learning the truth, Roberto and Marco immediately forgot their past. Soon after, they brought grief to another person by recreating what had once happened to them. The old dying men foresee that after their deaths, the patrol car and elevator would put an end to their respective cycles. Roberto himself used to be a boy named Ruben, who also got trapped. He went on a school field trip back in the day, but he and his friend couldn't get back in a canoe, so the instructor took them on a bamboo raft. The man slipped and fell into the water, hitting the boy in the process. Ruben's friend suffered a head injury and died 3 days later. Ruben had spent 35 years on the raft with the instructor, and before he died, the instructor told how that as a child, he ended up on a train that never stopped. Ruben didn't write down his name, and shortly afterward was able to reach the shore. All he had with him from his past life was a piece of bamboo. He got into a red pickup truck, abandoned on the road, and drove to Danielle and his mother's house. For 70 years, he had been repeating the same cycle, essentially wasting his life in 2 incidents. Danielle should not get into the patrol car, and Oliver should not get into the elevator. But the most important thing is not to forget their real names. Otherwise, everything will repeat, and a new tragedy will not be avoided. Everything that is happening is an alternate reality intertwined with the real lives of Danielle, Ruben, and Oliver. It's like the mechanisms of their emotional journey, deep within their souls. These incidents occur to transfer energy into the real world, and this energy is produced and transmitted through the physical and emotional movements of the trapped people. When young people are trapped, they create more energy, which is why their real counterparts feel happier. On the other hand, elderly people trapped in this alternate reality give out less energy, which ends up affecting their older selves in the real world, leading to a less happy life. With their last act, Marco and Roberto hand the young partners a small red notebook, but they don't write anything down in there and just bury the old men, eager to get out of the loop. Danielle steps out onto the road, where he finds an empty police car waiting for him. He touches the handle, but stops himself. He continues his routine for a day, but can no longer stay alone in this empty world. He picks up his hamster and his bag and walks towards the car. But as soon as he opens the door, his past life becomes completely meaningless, and he forgets his name. He lets his things out of his hands, and they fall to the road, like they have lost any meaning to him. Danielle hits the gas and drives away. Detective Marco's badge, gun, and haircut supplies are in the passenger seat. A red notebook appears there, containing a picture of Oliver and Carlos, as well as formulas describing the bullet's trajectory. The man cuts his hair and changes into his new clothes. Oliver also tries to resist pushing the elevator button. He has a hard time accepting what he's heard. The man walks up and down the stairs, going through conflicting emotions, and even puts a gun in his mouth so as not to bring grief to the next people involved in the incident. But eventually, he also gives up and steps into the elevator. Inside lies a concierge uniform and a name tag with the name Carl on it. In a red notebook, there are pictures of newlyweds and a diagram of a bee's body, as well as a drawing of a broken medicine vial. He transforms into a hotel employee and forgets about his past. In real life, which happened outside the incident, Danielle and Camilla reach the sea without any problems. Danielle falls in love, finishes school, and becomes a policeman. He has 3 daughters and he's happy. But his mother Sandra and Roberto often fight, leading to their breakup. As a result, Roberto spirals into a life of alcoholism, sinking deeper into his sinful ways until he ultimately passes away, alone. Oliver and his hurt older brother are taken to the station, where the man decides to turn his back on the life of crime. Oliver successfully overcomes his addiction and meets a girl with whom he starts a family. Marco, who had illegally entered the brothers' apartment and shot Carlos, is forced to let them go. Feeling frustrated, he goes back home, where he catches his wife in bed with a lover. Marco pulls out a gun and fires a shot, which leads to him spending the next 35 years behind bars. After finally getting released as a feeble old man, he meets his demise right on the street. In an alternate reality, an elevator carrying Oliver, now reborn as Carl, stops on the first floor of a hotel. Just then, newlyweds rush into the elevator, unable to contain their passion even with the concierge around. The girl asks her husband to slow down and starts chatting with the concierge, checking his name tag. Carl reveals that he is originally from Russia.
Piso 30, su equipaje por favor.
¿Cuánto tiempo llevas aquí, Carl?
20 años.
The groom hands the concierge his bag and swoops the bride into his arms. Carl follows them, but accidentally drops the backpack, making a loud clatter. He secretly takes out a small box with a bee and sets the insect free. The groom comes over, asking why Carl dropped his stuff, and the bee stings him on his arm. The bride hurries to the bag to grab the medicine, but the backpack slamming on the floor caused the vial to break. The man happens to be allergic to bee venom, so they need to act quickly. Suddenly, there's a big explosion. Carl seems to snap back to reality, and he tries to leave the floor along with the newlyweds. However, all the doors are locked, and the corridor strangely morphs into an endless loop, like the never-ending railroad, highway, and stairs we saw earlier. Fast forward to 70 years later, we see the dying bride lying on the steps of an infinite escalator. The production of this Mexican movie took a month, 2 weeks on the stairs, and another 2 weeks on the highway. When the filming began, the crew felt a bit claustrophobic, having to arrive before sunrise and leave after dark. Things got even tougher in the latter part of production, as the crew had to deal with scorching sun, rain, wind, and pesky mosquitoes, all the challenges in the wild. Every day, director Isaac Esbon asked the team which incident they'd prefer to be stuck in. They all initially leaned towards the highway, but their opinions drastically changed as filming progressed. The staircase scenes were filmed in a brand new 17-story building located in Mexico City. Hardly anyone lived there yet, and most residents had no clue that their emergency staircase was used for filming, since they always preferred taking the elevator. The film crew thought it'd be hilarious if someone accidentally stumbled upon them and discovered a whole crew of about 30 people, some quirky drawings on the walls, and a bunch of bottles filled with fake human waste. Well, it eventually happened, but surprisingly, the people who stumbled upon the set were impressed, and they started bringing their friends along like it was some kind of impromptu museum tour. When it was time to wrap things up, they actually pleaded with the director not to remove all the artistic elements from their staircase. During the movie premiere at a US film festival, the director came up with a fun idea, selling bottles with Oliver and Marco's waste as souvenirs. Despite some challenges, they managed to bring the bottles from Mexico on the plane. The audience loved the unique merch, and it was sold out quickly. The novel Time Out of Joint by Philip K. Dick, which Oliver reads in the movie, makes an appearance in the film, as the movie director is a big fan of the TV series Lost, known for referencing books in its episodes. Moreover, the novel's storyline, where characters get lost in alternate realities, served as inspiration for the movie. The director also mentioned drawing inspiration from Christopher Nolan's film Inception. As always, check out the name of the movie in the video description. In the meantime, let us know in the comments. Have you experienced any strangely recurring events in your life? Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to see even more cool recaps.